Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in once again to O'Neill's Grill for our weekly Fan and Press Luncheon with JMU head football coach Mike Houston. I'm Kurt Dudley from the Athletics Communications Department at James Madison University and from Madison HD Sportsnet as well. Well, the Dukes are 2-0 for the second consecutive year after Saturday's win over Central Connecticut State, 56-21 at Bridgeport Stadium, over 20,000 fans again at the Purple Palace, if you would. The Dukes, in their combined scoring of 136 points in these last two games, established a school record. That record was actually originally set from the end of last year until the opening game this year when the Dukes scored their 80 points against Moorhead, so that did not stand very long. A couple of other individual notes from players reaching milestones in that game. Khalid Abdullah rushed for 113 yards. He also scored a couple of touchdowns, one by the run, the other on a pass reception from Brian Shore, and he is the 14th player in JMU's 45-year football history to surpass 2,000 yards rushing in his career. Khalid, a senior from Newport News, Virginia. That was also his 5th 100-yard rushing game. Cardin Johnson finished with 121 yards. He got into the end zone twice, and that was his 6th 100-yard rushing game in his career. He is a redshirt junior, also from Newport News. And Brandon Ravenel had 6 catches, moving him past Macy Brooks. Macy played a little bit in the NFL with the Chicago Bears and the Dallas Cowboys back in the mid-90s. He also has tied Alan Harrison, who played in the early 2000s with the Dukes, as Ravenel and Harrison now sit tied for 5th with 123 catches. Next on the list is Jay Jones. He's got a little distance there, 151. And then Gary Clark is 3rd with 155. Coming up this weekend, the Dukes head to North Carolina to take on the Tar Heels, a team which is 1-1, losing to Georgia in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game that is in Atlanta. And then last week going to Illinois to defeat the Illini for the second consecutive year. The game is kicking off at 3:30 in Chapel Hill. You can watch it on Raycom Sports Network on cable, and it also will be available online through the ACC Network Extra. That is their deal with ESPN. So ACC Network Extra online will carry the game. Of course, the JMU Sprint Broadcast Radio Network will have it as well. Pre-game show begins at 2:30, and you can access that, of course, through WSVA here in Harrisonburg. You can go online to WSVA Online as well, and we also stream that through the Madison Audio channel. Speaking of Madison, a couple of other productions this week for your entertainment and enjoyment. Both soccer teams are at home this week. The men play LaSalle tonight at 7. We'll have that on Madison beginning at 7 o'clock. And the women will host VCU Friday at 7 o'clock. That also on Madison. Now let's bring in the head coach of the Dukes. He's 2-0, and that is Mike Houston. Coach Houston.
Good afternoon. Thank everybody for being here today, and good to have a gathering of some of our fans and others here with us, along with the media. Obviously, an exciting weekend this past weekend in Bridgeport Stadium, and another great crowd of 20,000 plus to see our team play on Saturday. I want to say thanks to everyone who participated in our first whiteout, and I would say everybody would agree that it was a resounding success, and glad to be able to get the win in the matchup with Central Connecticut State. Pleased to be 2-0 at this point in the season, and pleased with the way our team has come out and started the season on a real positive note. Saturday, I thought we started the ball game very, very well. I thought we came out and had the fast start that we really wanted to have on both sides of the football, scoring on all of our possessions in the first half. For the most part, being extremely effective defensively in the first half, be able to establish a good lead at halftime. A little disappointed in the way we came out in the third quarter. I thought maybe we were just a little flat, and which, although it may be understandable, is not acceptable. And I cautioned our team post game, and then again Sunday, that it's a great learning lesson for us that we've got to always keep our edge coming out of the locker room at halftime if we have the lead going in. But I thought that we responded, towards the end of the third quarter, got a couple of big plays on special teams, got a couple of stops defensively, able to get another score from Cardin Johnson there, and and finally put Central Connecticut away for the day. So a good win going into this week's matchup. We got a pretty drastic increase in the level of competition. That's you go from two teams that I feel like are not quite the level of play that we'll see in the CAA, to a team that is a top-tier ACC team this year, and having the experience of the last couple of years playing an SEC East team last year, playing the ACC champion Florida State the year before. North Carolina, their talent, especially on the offensive side of the football, is right there with what we saw from Florida State 2 years ago. So I think this is a very talented team we're playing. They're 1-1 on the season. It's their home opener. I'm sure they'll be really excited for that. It's a great challenge for our program going down there. At the same time, I think our players are very excited about the opportunity. I think they're very excited about the challenge. And I expect us to go down to Chapel Hill Saturday, and I expect us to compete and play well. So with all that being said, questions from the media to start off?
Dave Thomas from ESPN Harrisonburg, JMU Radio. You've got several staff members who have played Carolina over the last few years. Connor Mitch beat them in Game 1 last year with South Carolina. Terrence Alls played at Duke. Does all of that help in the game planning maybe a little more so than if you had no one who had a back history of being familiar with them?
Well, I think that, you look at those guys. I mean, Connor knows about every player they have on offense, personally. Like I said, Terrence played against him last year, but, Drew Dudzik coached against him last year. Donnie Kirkpatrick's faced him a half dozen times. In the past 10 years, Coach Trott's an alum, played in the secondary at Carolina years ago, and then has coached against them several times. So, yeah, there's a lot of familiarity with Chapel Hill. Several of our guys have coached against Coach Fedora in the past, so they know what to expect to a degree. But at the end of the day, it's still going to come down to how we can go out and execute in all three phases on Saturday. But at least we have a decent idea going into this game.
Daly, can you? I know obviously you guys announced last week playing more FBS teams coming up. Talk about the advantages of kind of playing some of those teams. Do you kind of enjoy that, and what do you kind of learn from some of those games?
From our first two?
No, from playing teams like FBS teams.
Okay. Well, and I think the big thing is, once everything calms down, because at kickoff Saturday you're going to have, for their home opener, you're going to have probably a full stadium or close to full stadium. It's probably going to be very loud, a lot of excitement and all that. After everything calms down, and that's the thing I'll talk to the kids all week about is, it's no different than any other game we're going to play all year. And really, for me, and I think for the players I've had in the past, and hopefully this team too, they really almost don't notice everything around them. And if they can have that approach to not get caught up in the stage, then it just comes down to doing the same things we do every day. I think the great thing that I learned from the last 2 years was, we were able to win at South Carolina last year. I understand that South Carolina is not the level of team that this North Carolina team is, but we didn't do anything differently against South Carolina than we did against Furman or Chattanooga or anybody else we played. And so really it came down to us controlling the things we can control. You see some of these games that get way out of whack with a score. And most of the time that happens because you go in there and you do things that you don't normally do in a ball game. You have people trying to do stuff that they don't do defensively. You turn the ball over. You try to do too much. If we can just go in there and be us, I think that's going to be our best chance for success. Well, I think both of their running backs. I mean, Hood obviously is a large presence, but then has breakaway speed. He's a powerful runner. And then you have Eight, who's really a more of a shifty, but has that dynamic breakaway speed. I think they have a great 1-2 punch there at running back. Maybe the one thing that gets lost a little bit is how well their quarterback runs. I think especially for a first-year starter, I thought he played excellent against Illinois. I think maybe 2 or 3 incompletions was it. Throwing the football, but then had a great day running the ball as well. So I think he's, being a dual threat guy right there that's as effective as he is, I really think he may be the key to the offense.
Obviously, he's an All-American. Is that going to be – how much emphasis do you put on that this week?
Well, I mean, you have to account for him. You have to account for him offensively because I think he's kind of their go-to guy in the passing game offensively and the screen game there. And I'm sure with some reverses and things like that. But in the punt return game, we've watched him for several years now. Change games with his abilities there. So certainly that's an emphasis this week. We've got to do a great job with our coverage team. Our gunner's got to do a great job with the kicks and where he places them. And so that's going to be an important factor in the ball game Saturday.
What kind of jump did you see them make from week 1 to week 2, their game against Georgia and then their game against Illinois?
North Carolina. I thought the big thing in week 2 was, and Illinois jumped out in that game early. But really once North Carolina settled down, I thought they were much better defensively against the run against Illinois than they were against Georgia. Now, Nick Chubb's probably had a little bit to do with that. But I thought that was one factor. And then 2, what I referenced a few minutes ago, I thought it was the play of their quarterback. I thought that, maybe he had some first game jitters there in the opener against Georgia. But in game 2, I thought, really he played a pretty complete game. There weren't many mistakes at the quarterback position in game 2.
Coach, kind of expounding upon that thought a little bit, looking at the Georgia game, they had some success, Georgia did, running inside, but it seemed they would pinch from the outside in, and their receivers, Georgia's, did a really nice job of containing and allowing outside alleys. Talk about the blocking your wide receivers are going to have to do this week, and did you kind of see the same thing when you looked at the film?
Yeah, and when you look at Georgia, Georgia's an eye football team offensively. So the point of attack of a lot of their running plays is a little bit different than ours. But yeah, you can see what was going on there, and I thought that they did a good job of being able to bounce some runs and get effective blocking on the perimeter. For us, though, like you said, I think that our perimeter blocking is going to be critical. If we can hold up there, it'll allow us not only to maybe have some success to the outside, but I think also any interior run that pops, it allows it to get a little bit more of a gain there if we can sustain those blocks on their secondary.
Looking at their tempo, it seems to be somewhat similar to what you run. I would assume an advantage to your defense as far as getting substitutions, trying to keep fresh legs in and going against a team that is as talented and quick as North Carolina.
Well, the one thing, they're probably a little bit faster than we are tempo-wise, and at times they're very fast. We're trying to simulate that for our guys in practice this week. I referenced yesterday that we were going to try to go against each other a little bit more this week because you have similar schemes defensively and similar schemes offensively. I think that will help our kids some. And certainly, we've got to try to play a lot of guys on the defensive side of the football because we've got to try to stay fresh. It's going to be a 3:30 afternoon game in Chapel Hill. You may have some heat there. That along with, the number of plays that they usually get on offense in a ball game, could be a challenge for us on Saturday.
I asked you about North Carolina's jump from week 1 to week 2, but what about your team? What kind of jump did you guys make from week 1 to week 2, you think, in what areas?
Well, I think probably, to start off with on offense and defense, I think offensively we were concerned about Central Connecticut State's size and how much movement that they had defensively. They're sitting there in a 3-down front, but they're pressuring and moving a lot. Down after down, and it got to the extreme a little bit on Saturday. I was very concerned about them being able to puncture our offensive front on run plays and pass plays, but I thought really, especially in the first half, I thought we handled that very, very well, which was encouraging to see. I think that shows continued improvement on our offensive line because we were very effective throwing the ball and running the ball in the first half there. So I thought that was a big improvement from week 1 because we saw a fairly stationary defense in week 1. Defensively, I think that, outside of one play in the first half, you saw a very solid half of play from our defensive unit, which kind of backs up, the strong start we had against Morehead State. that being a big emphasis for us in the off season, it gives our kids a lot of confidence in themselves going into the Carolina game.
David de Guzman, TV3 Harrisonburg. Coach, it's safe to say that both teams are going to approach this like they would any other game, but big picture of the FBS versus FCS, what kind of opportunity presents itself for JMU in terms of, I guess, changing like the public perception of FCS teams who are generally perceived as weaker opponents compared to FBS teams?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a pretty drastic difference. I mean, you look at the number of scholarships, 85 versus 63. You look at the funding. I mean, the funding is astounding, the difference in a school that's a Power 5 school versus us here at JMU. So it is pretty lopsided, the differences in the two programs. That being said, once the ball kicks off at 3:30 on Saturday afternoon, really those factors kind of go out the door because we're playing 11 on 11. So, I've always been of the opinion that you go into these ball games no different than any other game. We're going to go down there to compete. We're going to go down there try to win the football game, and our kids are going to have that mindset going into the game. As far as the public perception of what we are, I would hope that we're one of the top FCS programs in the country. I mean, that's what I think we are. So, we'll see how we play on Saturday.
Quick follow-up there. What do you hope to learn about your team looking long-term? You're also preparing for CAA play and just to get this team ready for the season down the road. What are you hoping to learn about your team this week, looking ahead long-term?
Well, I think we've done a lot of positive things in the first two games against two teams that I feel like are probably, a little bit below the standard of play that we'll see in the CAA this year. Now we're going in and facing a team in North Carolina that probably is well above the talent level that we'll see for the rest of the year in the CAA. So I think it's going to give us a good idea of exactly where we are. I said yesterday I'm not quite sure where we are right now. I think we're pretty good, but we'll find out Saturday just where we're at.
What do you kind of see for North Carolina's defense? Looking at them.
Well, I think they're much improved over what they were a couple of years ago. And Coach Chiswick's done a great job there with that unit. Interiorly, they're two defensive tackles, 90 and 97. I mean, I think 90 is 6'6", 310. 97 is 6'5", 300. They both can run very, very well. Their Mike Backer, number 10, right behind them, runs very, very well. So up the middle, they are a very strong unit right there and a very disruptive unit. And I think that's, a real key to the way they played against Illinois on Saturday. They're very similar schematically to what we do, from a 4-2-5 standpoint. They're very multiple. Secondary runs very, very well. Both corners were all ACC last year. Good cover guys there. So, I think it's a unit that, like I said again, is much improved over what they were a couple of years ago, and will be probably the best group we face all year.
Coach, looking at their passing game, it seems to be, through the first two games, the bulk of their passes are short, but yet they pick up good yardage after the catch. Talk about the kind of challenge that's going to be for your secondary, maybe your linebackers this week.
Well, I think it kind of starts with Switzer in the slot, and then 13 out wide, Hollins, former walk-on, who is the fastest player on the team. Certainly those guys are going to present a lot of challenges there. A lot of Switzer's plays come in the screen game or come in the RPO game where he's catching a slant or or seam route off of a play action pass. Once he gets the ball in open space, it's just like the punt returns. He's hard to handle there. We've got to be conscientious of Hollins beating us down the field too. When they have taken their shots, they've taken several his direction. But it's a thing where we're going to have to hold up. I think we're pretty decent in the secondary, so I think that our guys will be excited about the challenge and be able to see how they stack up against top tier talent.
Being that it's your home state, is your ticket request for this game gone up, and do you have plans to see a lot of family and friends while you're back in North Carolina?
Yeah, I probably got the greatest ticket request this week that I'll have, but it'll be good to be back in North Carolina and where I lived the vast majority of my life, and where both of our sons were born. So it'll be an exciting day from that standpoint.
You mentioned the tempo for North Carolina's offense. Do you have to play more defensive backs, more guys on defense, just because of how many plays they will run?
Well, it depends on how we're playing. I mean, if you play fast and you go 3 and out, then you'll stay fairly rested. But no, I think that we're going to have to do a good job of keeping our guys fresh, especially early in the ball game. We can't let ourselves get worn down in the first half, and so that'll be the real challenge there. I think part of that will come from just how effective we're able to be offensively. If we can do a good job of driving the football, then certainly that's going to give us time on the sidelines to recover. And our goal going into the game is to hopefully make North Carolina work for what offensive yardage they get, and at the same time for us to be able to drive the football when we're on offense. If we can do those two things, do a good job with the turnovers, and be solid in the kicking game, then I think we've got a shot.
Coach, this being the first road game of the Mike Houston era, do you like road games in the way that there's less distractions, and what's the approach that you're taking with this team on its first business trip of the season?
Well, I do think with road games, the thing we try to do home and away is keep a similar routine. Certainly with the travel on Friday, the routine will be a little bit different, but we're not going to change the structure really of what we do to what we would do on a home game. Hopefully, by keeping that routine week after week, home or away, it'll help our guys, be more consistent with their preparation and in turn be more consistent with their play.
Coach, a couple of questions from fans watching on Facebook. First of all, Kevin Fadley wants to know, what is the key against UNC to keep the run going inside the tackles versus on the wings?
Well, I think it depends on how they defend us. So, certainly we've got to be balanced on Saturday. I would imagine that they're, looking at the stats we put up in the first 2 games, and they're sitting there saying, well, they're not going to do that against us. So it depends on how they choose to defend us, but we'll see once the game kicks off.
Here's one that came in from Twitter from JMU Duke blog, and his question is this the most talented roster you've ever coached, and does that make it for a good problem to have, and that you've got so many weapons to choose from to get the ball distributed for you and your offensive coordinator, Coach Kirkpatrick?
It probably is. We'll see, because I go more on performance than I do on potential. So we'll see at the end of the year if this is the most talented roster that I've coached. I think that the roster I had last year performed pretty well down the stretch and in the playoffs. So, we'll see.
Any other questions from members of the media? All right, Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for being here. Look forward to Saturday. Go Dukes.
Again, the Dukes facing the Tar Heels of North Carolina, and kickoff is set for 3:30. Thank you for joining us here at O'Neill's Grill.